Hey, you guys. Welcome back to Listen Bitch Presents Tell Me Why You're Special. You guys, this is the arena where you stop waiting and you start showing up because you weren't created to play small. God's DNA is in you. You are built to grow, to lead, to become, to create. And all the things that people told you that you couldn't do, that's not your limit. Like, that's your message. So let's get into that today. Today's guest is Michelle Lee Steiner. She was told that what she wouldn't become, and then she went and did it anyway. And I want her to tell the story. So, welcome to the hot seat today, Michelle. And I start everybody kind of at the same place. Give me your elevator pitch and tell me what makes you special.
Sure. Well, my name is Michelle Steiner, and what makes me special is I am a writer, speaker, photographer with a learning disability, and I was told there was many things that I could not do, and I was able to do all of those things and more.
That's amazing. So, let's start there. You live with an invisible disability. When did you first realize that people saw you differently?
I was diagnosed with a learning disability early on. In fact, it started whenever I had the official diagnosis in kindergarten. My teacher noticed that I was really struggling in the classroom with writing my name, tying my shoes, dot-to-dot pages, counting anything math related, and she recommended that I get tested for having a learning disability. And sure enough, I have one. They didn't give it a specific name at that point. They didn't call it dyscalculia. They didn't know I had limited hand dexterity, but they knew I was not going to be a mathematician by the time I was 5 or 6 years old.
Well, what were some of the things that they did tell you that you couldn't do?
That came later in my life after I struggled all throughout my years with school, socially and academically, with school and learning and fitting in. But some of the things when I was in high school, when I knew I wanted to go to college, that's when things got a lot of limits started to get placed on me. I was told that I would not be able to go to college by my learning support teacher in 10th or 11th grade because I had so much difficulty in the class with that. She didn't think I could handle it. And she thought, well, maybe you could go to a vocational school. And nothing at the tech school interested me. I knew nobody would want me to cut hair. I certainly didn't think I'd want to do a computer. And later it came out I couldn't drive. So I don't know how I could have drove an emergency vehicle. So I think that I was definitely going to college, and then I had even more stigma to face with that. I had a psychiatrist who told me that most likely I would not go beyond community college. I was told once I got to community college that I would have limited job choices when I would graduate, and people thought that even using accommodations was cheating. So I faced a lot of that stigma. I also had somebody, whenever I was doing my internship, that told me, well, you may never find somebody because of your disability. And that also was a little hard because I thought, well, maybe I knew I wanted to get married someday in my life. So I had a lot of those stigmas. And even after I graduated with my bachelor's degree and my associates, and I had to go back in for an evaluation so I could ride paratransit service, they asked me, well, what do you want to do with your life? And so I put down like I wanted to write news articles or arrange photos, and I kind of let my imagination roll out of some things I would love to do. And I can remember once again, they said, well, based on her level, it's going to be too much for her. So we're not even going to consider these job choices. And I find that funny because I work now, I have a blog where I write about my life with a learning disability and I feature my photography. And those are some of the things they told me I couldn't do.
Yeah. I want to, I'm going to circle back here because I do have some questions about these
Mhm.
limits. Okay. But
Mhm.
can you tell us like what, because I know you named the disability, but I don't think I've ever heard that. So can you kind of explain
Sure.
what they diagnosed you with
Okay.
and how it affects the body?
Sure. I have dyscalculia, which is a math learning disability. And they don't necessarily put that on your report. They'll put specific learning disability, but the specific learning disability is for math is dyscalculia. So one of the things that I have difficulty with doing is I have difficulty with how numbers work. So I'll get lost in the steps of a problem. I'm not able to tell my right from my left. I don't know all my fact families, and I cannot read the face of an analog clock. I also have limited hand dexterity, and that is in both of my hands. And they didn't find that out until I was an adult at an eval, because whenever I was a kid, everybody thought that I had sloppy handwriting, I wasn't neat, and that was really labeled as a character flaw, and things would fall out of my hands. And then when I finally got diagnosed, it all made sense. The light bulb went off. I'm like, oh, that's why everything falls out of my hands. That's why I have so much difficulty with things like that. And then I also have visual perception issues, but that's in my brain, not in my eyes. So that makes it how I perceive objects and affects my coordination, my balance time, my balance, and then also just my reaction time to things. So I can't drive. I can remember my parents knew this would be a challenge as a teenager, so we waited a year before we even tried to do things with getting my license.
Yeah.
And one of the tasks they gave me after a year was, well, go mow the field. We lived out in the country, and instead of making beautiful long lines, I ended up making crop circles. So I affectionately say I know where crop circles come from.
Yeah. How does, okay, so going back to like, all the limits that were put on you outside of
Mhm.
obviously driving, that's probably why
Yeah.
you weren't like, forget you guys, I'm gonna get in the car. I'm sure you didn't press the ceiling for that one, but like how did that affect you internally? Like what are you experiencing when you're hearing all these limits?
I think it was really difficult for me because I was afraid. I thought, well, am I going to be able to do this?
Yeah.
Or am I not going to be able to do this? And there was always that fear in the back of my head that I was going to fail. I mean, I failed kindergarten, so I knew that that was a possibility in life, was having that failure. But I went forward and I did it afraid. I did it when everything was just going on in my life. And that's the only thing I could do. And I was very negative though. That was probably one of the biggest drawbacks. I didn't feel very good about myself. So I was like, oh, I'm not very smart, or things aren't ever going to get better, or I'm not going to have this life. And I went through this, well, if I could just get rid of the disability, then I would have the perfect life. And that's not how it worked out for me. Even when I graduated with my bachelor's degree, I still have my learning disability, but what I had was this sense of this hope and that feeling of accomplishment, and I thought, now I can go out and I can help other people. I still have my disability, but I'm able to help others.
Where was there a moment where you decided not to believe like what anybody was saying anymore? Was there just like this pivotal F you to the world, like I'm gonna do what I want to do?
I think when that happened was whenever I was at university. Before that, I was on my own for a while. And I loved being independent because like not being able to drive, I was able to take myself places. I was working some temp jobs, but for financial reasons, I had to move back in with my parents, and my job was downsizing. And at this point, I said, I'm going to give university a try. That's all I told myself I had to do. And I found a program that had the least amount of math and science possible, and had disability accommodations. And I understood a few things with going back to college. I knew that if I didn't do well in a class, it was not going to be the end of the world. And I understood a lot more about myself. And I also knew there was always going to be people that were going to think that using these services was unfair or cheating. And I just had to shut those voices out and focus in on what I needed to do in my life. And I think it was after college with trying to find the right job and a lot of places saying, hey, we're disability friendly, and they turned out they weren't. I stopped really thinking about, well, what is this cookie cutter life that everybody thinks I should be doing because I have a disability, and what really works for me? And it's when I started to really focus on my strengths, and I started to focus in on knowing how to speak up for myself and to be able to really look at situations before I jumped into that and think of it as more of we're going to solve what the issue is. Because some of those issues, it doesn't go away. And you have to just figure out, how can I solve it at that moment? And when I changed that approach from just being someone that was like, oh, there's nothing I can do, to I'm going to be a problem solver with this.
Yeah.
That's when things really started to change in my life.
That massive responsibility. So no magic wand
Yeah,
came down and said, "Hey, Michelle, I'm going to fix everything for you. Life's going to be great." It was like you were like, "I'm going to choose this and this is what I'm going to do." I love that.
yep,
Great
exactly.
message for the audience because there's so many people that are just walking around and not taking that responsibility. They're stuck in that victim mode and they're not even struggling with an invisible disability, right? Um,
Right.
what is that? I guess this is going to be a two-part question because what does an invisible disability actually look like in your day-to-day life? And what do people misunderstand the most about it?
One of the hardest things about having an invisible disability is people cannot see it, or it's hidden, because oftentimes I'll tell people, well, I have a learning disability, and they'll say, well, you don't look like you're disabled. And I have to say, well, some disabilities we can see, other ones we can't see. And a lot of times they're thinking that they're giving me a compliment, and that's really not a compliment. There's nothing wrong with having a disability, whether someone can see a disability or somebody can't. Neither one is fine. That because that's a person that has value and worth. And I look at that too. With having one, people can't see sometimes the struggle. Now, sometimes people that might have disabilities that are similar or might be neurodivergent, they can tell. They can tell if you're masking something, and if you're just kind of like, oh, I don't know what I'm doing here. They can see that a little bit easier with some of the behaviors. But as far as other people, they can't, they don't understand when I go into a room and I have to tell everybody I'm not able to help with math. All the kids know it, and or they'll soon find out. And sometimes it's hard when I go into a classroom and I have to work with somebody new, because they think, well, you should know this. You have a bachelor's degree.
Yeah.
You're an adult. You're working with kids. This isn't hard information. You
Yeah.
should know this stuff. And sometimes we have to go in and say, well, no, I'm not able to help them because of this, but here's what I can do.
Yeah. That's amazing. I mean, what does it really mean to you to be working, with students with disabilities? And are you seeing parts of your younger self in some of the kids that you work with?
I can definitely see it. I work with seventh graders, and sometimes it is like hearing a recording of myself. I'll hear them say, I hate my disability. I wish I didn't have it. I don't feel like I'm very smart. I don't want to be in this class. I just want to be normal.
Uh,
And I understand what all those feelings are like. And I get to be that reassuring voice that tells them it's not a bad thing to have a disability. And our classes are here to help. And I get to show them how to advocate for themselves. And I think whenever I was younger, there wasn't that disability representation. It was a lot of the stories were told from the perspective of a white man that had a reading disability. That's all I ever heard about. I didn't hear about anybody that had a math disability. I didn't hear about any other females that had that. So I try to go in, and I think I can understand that, because that's I've sat in the place that they've sat at, and I am an adult that has a disability and a job, and I just really hope to help them have success in their life. And it may look different than my life, and that's okay, but I want them to be able to go out and achieve every dream that they have.
Absolutely. What is something that you wish that teachers and parents or society understood better?
I think one of the things that I wish they understood was that well, a few things. I wish we had a more customized approach. That's the first thing, because I think sometimes schools and also even employers, they want to put everybody in this box, and this approach should work for everybody, and it should work for someone with a disability, and it that doesn't always work out to be the case. So I think sometimes it's providing programs that are able to meet the needs of the person, but also to push the person to in an appropriate way, because just because I have a learning disability doesn't mean I can't learn, doesn't mean I can't do things, but I need that push in those areas that I can do, and then and those things that I can't. I need that respect of saying, okay, she knows her boundaries, she knows what she can and can't do at this point. And I also think I would just love to tell people that we are really trying. And sometimes that might look like we're not. And but that person with one really wants to do well, really wants to have that success, and really wants to try, but just sometimes they just might need a different way of being explained, or just sometimes being pointed in the right direction. I had a student today that they had questions to answer and he didn't understand where to get the information from. So
Right.
we kind of played around and he was just sitting there. So I was like, all right, well, let's find where you need to get the information at. He got the information. He goes, okay, I can take this from here. And he got the work done. So I think sometimes it's finding what is going to work for that student.
Yeah. And I can relate to that because my brain is neurospicy, and what works for a lot of people doesn't work for me. And so,
Yep.
coming in a system where everything is just neurotypical, I think,
Hmm.
and that setback, that's my brilliance, right? It's definitely not the defective side of me. No, that's
Hmm.
that's my ego, you guys, right? That's the part that's but what part of your journey are you most proud of that a lot of people overlook?
I think part of the what I'm most proud of in my journey is that I'm able to see details that other people might miss sometimes. And I get to do that when I'm on my walks. And I don't, I, because I can't drive, I get to notice a detail in a flower or just other things people will miss. I'll be with my husband and I'll say, did you see that? He's like, no, I'm focused on the road. And later on, I'll get to go back to a flower that I saw. And I get to take that picture of that flower. And people tell me that I bring out the details in a flower that they will miss. And I think if when I don't have a ride and I get to, that gives me that chance to literally stop and smell the roses and to take those pictures. And there's just so much beauty that I would miss if wasn't on those walks. And I could also translate in my life that a lot of that pain that I never thought had any purpose has really been there is beauty in that. And there is a plan.
Yeah. I mean your insight is beautiful, and your experience, like you've created something amazing here. Right now, where are you still growing and still kind of pushing yourself?
I think what I'm still trying to grow and push myself in doing is just being able to find those things I can do and be able to find the solutions for things that still give me some of those difficulties. And just knowing where I need to have that little push at sometimes that I can do this. I have this. I don't need sometimes the support. And sometimes I do, but it's knowing that limit. But I think it's just like looking for different ways and just uh, to be able to solve those issues.
Okay. So my final question is kind of
Uh-huh.
important. And if you had believed everything that people said about you, what would your life look like today?
Think if I would have believed everything that people would have said about me, I don't think I would have went to college. I think I might have been somebody that might have had a job, maybe doing some kind of task that stocking shelves, which there's nothing wrong with doing something like that, but it's not something I would love to do. Or I might have something just maybe housekeeping or something. And that once again, nothing wrong with those jobs. Those are all wonderful things if somebody wants to do those or feels that they need to do that in order to make it. I think I might been living with my parents for a while. I might have even been on SSI at that point. And again, there's nothing wrong with any of those things, but that's not the kind of life that I would have wanted. I don't know if I would have been able to get married. I don't know if I would have went out to make new friends. I don't know if I would have saw half the stuff I would have that I've seen. And I think the big thing is somebody else would be making those decisions for me in my life, and it wouldn't be me having that self-determination.
Yeah, I think that's incredible. Tell everybody how they can get resourced with you, where they can find your blog, all the things to support you.
Sure, you can find me at my blog, www.michellesmission.com.
Okay. Michelle, I'm going to tell you what I think actually makes you special. And it's not just what you accomplished, it's the fact that you were told you can't over and over and over again. And you did not accept that as truth. You built the life anyway. And you see the contrast in that. You got the degree, you found your voice, you stepped into a work that gives back to people who need it. And that's what I really want you to see in everything that you're doing, and everything that you faced in your journey. It was to bring you to the point where you're going to be helping the kids that you help, because who else would be helping them had it not been for you finding your voice? Who else would help if you hadn't have found your strength? This is
Mhm.
unshakable. What you're doing is unshakable. And now you're living proof that limits do not define people, they reveal them. And I think that's what makes you incredibly special. And I love that you came here today to share this story. To everyone listening, stop letting other people decide what you're capable of. God didn't create you with limits, He created you with purpose. You're meant to grow, to rise, to become, to be contagious, to be courageous, to be magnetic. And please do not forget, your mess is your message. That thing that you think disables you from pushing the limits is the thing that's going to give you the purpose to help the next person. And the thing that you've been through, the labels, the doubt, the setbacks, that's the foundation. And I'm going to say this because I can't have another show without saying it. You guys, podcast is one of the most powerful tools right now for your voice, for your business, for humanity. And like, nobody's using it the right way. Okay. Your voice really matters. And I created a podcast support group because of that. I help you create your voice, cultivate it, simplify it, start it, turn your story into something that actually helps people and build something real. So if you've been sitting on your story, please join the group, get in the arena, and start using your voice. Also, I know you love this episode. I know you love Michelle's story. So please do me a favor and hit subscribe so you don't miss another conversation. Share this episode with someone that you know who needs to listen to it, okay? And if you don't think you know anyone, share it anyway, because you know people we don't know that we'll never be able to touch here. So make sure you leave a review. I do love you to take 2 minutes out just to write one, okay? That also is a better reach for me to hit other people. And if you're ready for the hot seat, you guys, come tell me why you're special. Michelle, God bless you and the work that you're doing. I think it's amazing, and you have a lot of people out there right now that really have to be asking themselves, like, why am I not moving the needle right now? If she could get past her limits, I can. And I think that's incredible. Thank you so much.
Thank you for having me. It's been a pleasure.